How did you get the nickname, or how did you name yourself the Big Burly Chef?
That's a good question. I've always been fascinated by chefs. When I was a kid, I used to go to restaurants. My parents would take us out, once a month or something to Japanese restaurants or big French kitchens, and I would see these chefs, and I was just kind of mystified. So I always thought I wanted to be a chef, but I had no idea what that actually entailed and how much work it just really went into it. I left the kitchens. I went to cooking school, and then I kind of left the kitchens, and I started to kind of form my own companies, which was a catering company called Confusion Catering. Honor, Fusion, Confusion. It was kind of confusing. I was doing everything from weddings
Oh.
to corporate retreats and lunches to private dinners, really anything. That was kind of in my mid 20s, just hustling to get any job I could. And just kind of prior to COVID, I really wanted to focus on more of an exclusive clientele. My skills, my business was quite refined by that point, and I needed to rebrand. And I was in a kind of a think tank weekend with my brother and his now wife, but fiance at the time, and we were coming up with all these different names, and he kind of just yelled out like, why don't we just call you what you are? Like, you're big, you're burly, and you're a chef. So let's call it the Big Burly Chef. So we Googled that. There was nothing registered. So we saved the domain that night. And then the next day I went in and filed, incorporated in Canada, and it was available. So that was the birth of the Big Burly Chef, November 11th, 2018.
Wow. It's a great name.
Oh, thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. And it was, you know, serendipitous with timing. I mean, you know, really like right before COVID happened, we launched it. And then the first year of COVID in 19, contrary to many people's realities, I was super busy. You couldn't go to a restaurant, but I could come to your house. So that first year I was flat out. Almost every weekend I was cooking. So it was a big year for me, and that kind of launched the Big Burly Chef into just some of what it is now.
Nice. And so I read on your website that you've been on a 14-year culinary journey. Is that from like the start of when you went to cooking school? It's been
Yeah,
14
exactly.
years?
So it's been about 14 years ago. So I went to cooking school when I was 22. I had just kind of left professional sports, or I was trying to make professional sports, hockey and box lacrosse, and I didn't make the big leagues. So as a 21-year-old punk, I went, what do I want to do with my life? What am I going to do? And I started to explore different options, and I traveled a little bit. I went to Africa, working oil and gas exploration. Went to Tanzania and Kenya for about a year, and I
Wow.
came home not really, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I kind of had at the time I thought I had like a midlife crisis, um, even though I was only 22.
The quarter life
And
crisis.
yeah, exactly. And an ex girlfriend of mine, my first love in life from high school, she said, why don't you ever go to cooking school? You've always loved to cook. You've always idolized these chefs. Maybe there's something available there. So then my mom, being the great researcher that she is, she found quite a few programs around the country. And the best program that I found was actually in my hometown, Calgary, which was a 2-year professional
Wow.
cooking diploma. And then I did that, and it was like second day of school. I was in my whites, classic French style, and and yeah, I was just in a happy place, in the big kitchens, and with all these other chefs around. And so since that, I did 2 years of that cooking. I was into a restaurant in Calgary, actually two restaurants, two of the best restaurants, some in the country, and I had to pick one. I also did an internship at the Banff Springs Hotel, which is a top 10 hotel in the world. So I was very quickly thrown into the fire, so to speak, in the chef world. And I was blessed to be able to be in some of the best kitchens in Canada. And after a little while, I still had that travel bug in me. So I knew I wanted to explore the world with food. And everywhere that I ever gone before was, I was just fascinated by different cultures and different cuisines and the stories that you can really read and feel and taste on a plate. So
Hmm.
when I left the restaurants in Calgary in my late 20s, I started to go to Asia and was just blown away by the ability to create flavor and the consistency with products and recipes. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've really spent most of my time in Africa, places like Tanzania and Kenya, Uganda, Namibia, Zimbabwe. So really a lot of old school, old history cuisine that's built around tradition and with a little few modern twists to it. But I say a 14-year culinary journey, but really it's been 37 years because I've always been exposed to different foods. My parents were always very supportive of me trying different flavors and different foods and pushing my limits to what we understand food to be.
Mm. And what led you to Africa?
Originally, that was in 2008. My first job um, was I when I first left sports. I took a job doing exploration work, and my father's company, which is a geophysical exploration company, he had a job, a crew working in Tanzania. So I flew to Tanzania and
Oh,
spent 6 months. I actually originally flew to Kurdistan, Iraq, and spent 4.5 months there in 2008, right in the northern part of Iraq, in the Turkish and Iraqi mountains. So quite a hostile place, but a beautiful, beautiful people there. And about after 4 months, I took another job, the same type of job, but in a much safer place, which was Tanzania. And you know, it, I always remember my first full day in country. Um, we had a beautiful sunrise, this dark red, beating red sunrise,
really?
and then all really hot day, 55 degrees. But then the sun set.
Celsius?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, very, very warm.
Wow,
Uh,
that's
yeah,
hot.
yeah, it was like 100% humidity. Like it was like welcome to Africa. Uh, but then the sunset was epic. Um, and I'll always remember that feeling of that first sunrise and sunset. And I knew that a piece of my heart was always in Africa from that point forward. So um, since 2008,
Mm.
I've been, if I'm not in Calgary cooking or doing other projects, typically I would be over here in one of 6 or 7 countries working on some of our family crews, working for the family business, or or exploring different cuisines and cultures or animals, or doing safaris and this kind of stuff.
Mm. I'm a huge fan of sunrises and sunsets. So I feel you on that. And I've only seen them in photos in
Yeah,
African sunsets but I already know it's if I go over there and check it out, I'm gonna be enamored with
mm,
it.
really.
Yeah.
Now, would you say you're a sunrise or a sunset?
I have to enjoy what's available where I am. So I'm from Miami originally, and so I used to be the sunrise because that's what there was.
Yeah.
And but when I'm in places like on the west where you can see, I love a good sunset. I gotta say, I think I'm more a sunset person.
All right. All right.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I'm a sunset guy. I love the sunrise, of course. It starts the day. It's a beautiful experience. But for me, the sunset is something where I can just drift off into the evening uh, and let my mind wander in the stars above.
Oh, the stars. Do you get to see a lot of stars out there?
We do, yeah, spectacular. There's such little light pollution in so many of these areas, so constantly, the stars are really gleaming. Oftentimes, we set up time lapses, just even in the cities, because even where I'm right now in Harare, Zimbabwe, there's so little actual light in the city itself. Power is a big issue here, so there aren't street lights or there's nothing like this that we have made so custom back home. So, you can just look up on a regular night and typically see a lot of what's above us.
Mm. And I remember there were a few times when the power went out in the neighborhood and people were in such a rush to get the light back on. I'm like, just wait a minute, look up. We never get to see this.
That's
And
true.
I was like, shoot away with my woo-woo-ness. Nobody wants to look at the stars apparently. Not enough people anyway. But that's amazing that there's not that much light pollution. That's a blessing, I
It is.
think.
I think so too. Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you incorporate a lot of African traditional flavoring and recipes in your cooking?
I tend to, I've kind of developed my own brand of cooking or my own style, which every chef does, but it's kind of like global local. And I say that with intention behind global technique, inspiration, stories, dishes, recipes, uh, memories that I've experienced that I've been so blessed to experience over, I think I'm at 37 countries now, traveled and worked in. Whenever I'm, wherever I am cooking for if it's my best friend or clients or a lover or what, um, I like to take this idea, this approach where you take what you learned, you take again those stories or memories, and then you apply, what's locally available to you. Go to the markets, go to your farmers markets, go into those stores that you're always afraid to go into. Go down to the grocers that you've never been into. Chances are, if you start talking to people about food and about recipes, people are going to be really friendly and they're gonna want to help you out. So, buy something that you've never bought before. Um, um, use a spice that you've never heard of. And oftentimes you'll find that there's a lot of deliciousness behind just that one new thing. So I do certainly use a lot of African spices and traditional methods to cook, but I also, use all sorts of different techniques and whatnot from different cultures. So to say that I'm only using African cuisine would not be true. Certainly using many techniques and traditional methods, and certainly open for more to learn more as we keep going.
Okay, so your cuisine or your style is global local.
Global, local, yeah.
That's cool. I think it's the first time I've heard that. I've heard the local before, but not global local. That's
Global, local, yeah.
that's neat.
Ideally like use a story. Use a memory, and I say that it could be a smell, it could be something that happened, it could be an experience with an animal, I'm very blessed to have a lot of safari adventures. I also, in my business now, I'm specializing in bringing North Americans, specifically Canadians, because that's most of my market, to Africa to explore these amazing places that I get to call home. So on these African adventures. So, while we're here, we're experiencing so much, and we're experiencing food on a daily basis from different cultures and cuisines, even within the same countries that we are. If we're with maybe the Shona people or the Mukambeli people or the Maasai in Tanzania or all these different people, the Zulus maybe. So there's so much cuisine happening even within a certain region.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a big blessing to be able to experience that from just a consumer and eater standpoint, but then from a chef standpoint, it's like, how are you doing this? What are you using? What are these products that you've used for millennia that have fed, a nation of people forever? So understanding what they are, they're very traditional typically, and that's great. And sometimes I throw in little twists here and there that sometimes are taken with two thumbs up, and sometimes they don't work at all. But if you don't take risks, then I think life gets pretty boring sometimes.
Yeah. I was talking to my cousin yesterday about this because, Thanksgiving holiday is coming up in the US, and the food is the center of everything. And so I was
Cool.
telling her that I made a pumpkin pie from scratch, like from an actual pumpkin.
Nice.
And she was like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." And so her husband's like, "Oh, I want to try that." And she's like, "Yeah, but he just gets in there and he does whatever he wants." And I told her, "But sometimes you have to experiment. Sometimes
Absolutely.
it doesn't work out. And sometimes it's like you discovered the next big thing."
That's so true. Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you gotta
You
go
got to
through a
try something
few.
new. I really believe that we as humans, it's especially in food, it's great to have our traditional foods, but you have to remember as well that at one point everything was new. So even your best friends that know you better than anybody, at one point they were strangers. So get out of your
Mm,
shell and try something new, meet somebody new, say hi, try a new flavor, try a new soup, go to that restaurant that you've driven by 1,000 times you've never walked into. You know, just you don't have to do it all the time, but it is important to do it a little bit.
yeah. So what's your favorite? I know it might be hard, but pick one traditional African dish that you really love. And then what's one traditional dish that you've Big Burly Chefed with a twist?
I'll tell you a story. I was working in Namibia, in the Kalahari Desert, the oldest desert in the world, and there's the people there, the San people. The San people were originally in Zimbabwe, and over years of slavery and some horrible things that have happened, the San people were kind of pushed to the west and pushed into the Kalahari Desert. And we were doing an exploration program there. This was just about 2 years ago. And we had been in the desert for about 6 weeks. And the Kalahari sand is this really dark, deep red. It almost has the appearance that blood has been mixed into the earth. And in a lot of ways it
Wow.
has. It's this very almost hypnotic sand and whatnot. It's just the culture to it almost in a way. Uh, so I'd been in the sand for quite a while, and there's something called sadza. or pop or ungali, the same food, but described in many different ways. And what it is it's cornmeal. So if you take almost like polenta, not polenta. So if you take a kernel, just like your fingernail, you have the yellow kind of top sugar part of the corn, and then where the little white part is on your fingernail is the little kernel. And that in the South it's called a grit. But what they do is they dry that and then they grind it, they mill it to a flour, to a it's so fine that it's like a powdered cinnamon almost. It would just go in the air. And what they do is they boil that in water, and it's just water and you just pump it and you stir it all day long, and it turns into this texture that's like a glue almost. It's like an over ripened or over gelatin jelly. I mean, the whole thing will just move back and forth, but can't penetrate it. So that's a staple meal for, you know, I would say half of Africa every day, every meal. If they're lucky, they might get a relish with that, which would be typically greens, like a really hearty Swiss chard or wild spinach or kale, mixed with a bit of tomato and onion. And that would make that into kind of a relish. And if they're really lucky, they might get a bit of protein with that as well. So we were cooking that every day for our crew, about 500 men every day, every meal. And I started to get, and it's quite tasteless. This pop, it doesn't have a great texture, uh, but again, it's a staple food. And I started to get quite impatient with this product. So one day I said, you know what? Today I'm going to try something just a little bit different. And I ended up making a really light chicken stock. I didn't use quite much fat at all because I didn't want it to be yellow and get that really color. So I used mainly bones and light chicken breasts and a few flavorings. But again, kept it quite of a clear broth, had good flavor to it. And I used that as the liquid to cook this pot. And here we go. Dinner lines up, and it's like a buffet service. Essentially, there's a big line of guys coming through, and we'd be feeding 500 people for dinner, so quite a bit of amount of food. And sure enough, the first guy that hits the line, he's been working his ass off all day in the blazing sun, comes up and he smells the pop, and he says something in his language, local language, and it's like a bushfire. I mean, it went down the line quicker than you could even shake a stick at. And all of a sudden, all these heads started poking out, going, "Oh my God, there's something wrong with the pot." I had mutiny on my hands within 2 or 3 minutes. I thought I was going to get my head chopped off as a chef.
Oh God.
Luckily, I knew that this was a risk, and I had ordered the chefs in the kitchen to make the classic staple that night just in case something happened. And sure enough, it did, and I saved my white head from being chopped off from mutiny. But it's one of these like crazy stories where, man, I learned that day you cannot mess with these traditional foods where these people have eaten this thing literally every meal, every day of their lives. Uh, so taking this ingredient that it's not so bad if you have it a few times, but once you start eating it every day, you kind of get bored of it. And I tried to Big Burly a little bit, and it did not go over at all.
But did
So
it taste good? Was it good?
I thought it was pretty good. We had a few guys out of the 500 that would have it,
Okay.
Mainly the guys at the end of the line when they just started to get a little more loosey goosey, and I did get some compliments on it, but I was also told by the vast majority of people to not f around with their salsa. So
Yeah. Yeah. Makes me remember when, my husband is from Mexico, and the first time I had tamales here in Miami, where I grew up, you put ketchup on the tamale. I grabbed
oh
the ketchup, and everybody was like, blasphemy, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm putting ketchup. They're like, never do that. And I was like, oh, okay. So
yeah,
I feel
exactly.
that, I mean, not at the same level as what you went through, but yeah, there are some traditions that you just leave it alone or go by yourself and do whatever you want with it, kind of
That's
thing.
right. Yeah.
So how did you get into retreats?
I think originally I think my first retreat was a yoga retreat about 10 years ago. And I'm a bit of a yogi at heart. When I
Oh,
practice
I
anytime I
didn't know.
can. Yeah, I mean I love doing yoga. When I'm practicing, I'm living a healthier life. I just feel better about myself. I'm up in Canada, we do quite a bit of hot yoga, especially in the winters. It gets 30, 40, 50 below centigrade sometimes. So it gets quite chilly. And the hot yoga scene has really kind of taken off there. Um, and, for people that don't know what hot yoga is, because they live in a hot climate, essentially it's like a studio room that's, has maybe rooms are at 35 or 40 degrees, and you come in centigrade, and you come in and you'll do flows or vinyasas or whatever have you in those rooms. So just a great opportunity to get a bit more of a sweat on, a bit more of a purge happening, but also really focusing on your breath and kind of warming yourself up, especially with the outside cool temperatures. So I really started getting into yoga and valuing the community that is, that is the room and that are the yogis. And I went on a 1 day retreat, just a simple yoga retreat. I think it was a 6 or 8 hour day. We did yoga maybe twice or three times. We did some breathing. We did some journaling, some sharing. It was just a really beautiful day. And there was no egos. There was no pretentiousness. It was just, anybody was there. All sorts of different lifestyles were represented and cultures. So it was this like melting pot of people that just formed this beautiful community for that day. And I really enjoyed it. I really valued, the lessons and the teachings that I was being given, and some of the friendships that I was able to make that day, and then also just like how good I felt. So in the last, 10 or 12 years, I've really focused on going to retreats. So whenever I'm typically in January every year, it's a bit of a lull period where I'm not cooking much, and maybe some of our projects overseas aren't starting up because of the rains in Africa. So I usually have like, 4 to 6 weeks where I'm kind of just hanging out in cold Calgary. And I typically try and find a retreat, a yoga retreat, somewhere warm, Costa Rica, Mexico, sometimes Bali, Indonesia, these fascinating, unique places. And I'll go and spend typically 2 or 3 weeks in retreat, and, just living healthier and really exploring that space and exploring myself and kind of coming back to my center and my balance. So in my own business, bringing people to Africa on luxury adventures, excuse me, I've I've really wanted to bring the wellness factor into what we do. And this past just a few weeks ago, I had 13 Canadians come over, 2 Americans, into another 3-week journey across Africa, from South Africa up to Zimbabwe. And we incorporated more of a wellness focus on it, with daily yoga and some breath work, some journal writing, some sharing circles, and really incorporating the retreat style into the luxury wellness kind of safari business. And that's really kind of the focus that we're going towards now. So retreats themselves, I've always been a big fan, and I've enjoyed my time at pretty much every retreat I've ever gone to. And I'm a real big believer in really embracing that. And then now I'm really realizing that the retreat space is ultimately what I'm doing anyways in business. I'm just needing to kind of reframe it as that a little bit, and bring in more of the focus on the wellness side.
Mhm.
So
That's
the
really,
yeah, so the ability to create, and I've always been blessed from my mother and father always telling me to paint my picture. So look at the sky, wherever you are in the world, paint your picture in the sky because it will change. But wherever you are, you can look up and you can paint it. So, what does that incorporate? Well, it incorporates a healthier lifestyle. It incorporates, daily movement, incorporates, building community, providing, facilitating a safe space for people to share, for a community to grow. So that's ultimately some of the things that we're putting into our business to make sure that we can supply that, we can facilitate that for future generations.
I love that. I think that's only going to take what you've been offering to a whole nother level of greatness. Um, and I want to ask you about the animals in safari, because along those lines of wellness, a lot of times we think animals are wise teachers. If we choose to see them that way, we learn a lot about ourselves because we are nature and they are nature, of how to just be, because they are the masters of just being. And
Yeah.
you often hear, like, the elephant is a huge representative of, or a representation of wisdom. So what is your experience of when people go out there and experience these animals in their natural habitat?
It's a great question, and I'm happy you asked it. There's so much we can learn from animals on a daily basis, whether it's our dogs or our pets, to the animals of the wild. And you mentioned elephants. We call them Ellies over here, and they're majestic creatures. They live up to 80 years old in the wild. These animals are very wise. They have all sorts of different traditions, customs within their communities, which is fascinating. Oftentimes, whenever we come, or every time we come here to observe animals, one of the strengths to my success, and one of the keys to my success, is bringing in the best people. So getting the right people on the bus. And oftentimes that's long recorded professional game guides, people that have spent and dedicated their lives to the bush, to conservation, to helping preserve animals and doing what is necessary to protect the animal species. And a lot of times when we're out in the bush, either in our vehicles or if we're on foot, there's things that you can do that I think I should say there's things that you have to do to remain safe and to give that respect to the animals that we are showing up on their doorstep, and gracefully they're accepting us being there. So, one of the bigger points of any journey that we start with for people is gratitude and the ability for us to learn how to really just calm down, bring ourselves to a point where we are present in the moment, that we are present in a space, in an area, in a park, in a national park, in a concession, whatever have you. But really just grounding and accepting that we are now part of this space, this intimate space that we're sharing with the animals. And there's all these little lessons that we like to incorporate through our journeys, but gratitude is really one of the bigger ones on a daily basis. Before we have meals, we have a gratitude circle. So we go around the circle, and sometimes it's breakfast and lunch is usually a real quick one word. What are you thankful for? Gratitude today. And then at dinner, it's typically a little more longer winded gratitude sharing circle. Sometimes that takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes half an hour. It's amazing what people sometimes share around a circle before we have dinner and break bread together. So when it comes down to the animals themselves, the animal kingdom is raw, and it does not hold back. Sometimes we see these beautiful moments of birthing and love
Sure.
making and mating and mothership and fatherhood and all of these unique experiences that are really beautiful to see. And on the other side of it, sometimes you see death, you see hunting, you see fighting, you see animals, sometimes same species fighting, sometimes different species are fighting, typically at water holes or ponds, pans, as we call them here. Water is a it's a lifeline. So sometimes water holes are overcrowded and there's a lot of tension there. And sometimes animals react in different ways. So whenever we're watching animals, we really rely on the guides to tell us and to share with us what's happening and what the history is with these animals and what the storylines are, what these animals are experiencing as bigger herds into micro herds into their own family units. Um, so one of the things that we do every day is journal writing, and I'll lean back and grab this one, please. So every person that comes on one of my journeys, I
Oh,
give
it's
them
nice
a
too.
beautiful leather bound journal, and we always encourage people to write down your experiences of what you saw that day, what you experienced on a human level, on an emotional level. Sometimes what we've seen it on a moment. Sometimes it takes us, a little bit of time to really think about it, to process it, and get back, and then we write about it that night or whenever it feels natural. But there's many lessons that we can learn from animals.
Mm.
Excuse me. I think one of the more important lessons that we try and share with people is our ability and the animals' abilities to coexist sustainably and peacefully together. Sometimes there's rawness and sometimes there's that life and death, the old circle of life, but there's also this harmonious balance that happens. Um, and that's a really beautiful thing to experience.
Indeed. Um, yeah, I can't wait to experience that. And just, I mean, today I was talking to Israel, my husband, about like nature is so beautiful, but it's also dangerous. It's so dangerous. And, you know, I notice there's a lot of birds where I'm at. a lot of birds, a lot of raccoons, squirrels. And one thing I notice about them is they're so present. Like there are moments when they relax and, they're off guard, but for the most part, you can see it in their eyes, they're like they're on alert the whole time. And yeah, that's just one of the things that I notice about animals, about how they're so aware at every moment of everything that's going on.
Mhm. Truly.
Mm.
I think we are as well once we're able to, leave the cities. Once we're able to get out in nature, it's amazing what will change in our senses. Our eyesight gets a lot much better. Our hearing gets a lot better. Even people that have never been on safari or adventure before in Africa, even after a day or two out here, it's amazing to see the transformation that people can experience. Their eyesight, their eyes, they start to get used to the land, and they can start to pick up animals in the bushes and whatnot, something that typically you wouldn't be able to do. Um, the sight of the hearing, different bird calls, different animal sounds, even the wind coming through the trees. There's all these
Mm.
subtleties to them that, quite quickly our bodies are able to ground to and get familiar with. And I think one of the things that we try to really incorporate on our retreat is the ability to indulge, but indulge in the right types of behavior. So often with these bigger cities and city life, people are indulging in a lot of consumption of sometimes not the healthiest things, toxins, drugs, alcohol, really loud, the media, the phones, the music, the constant ads, which is a form of indulgence. But on our side, we try and indulge you with, more healthier components, maybe more teas, traditional foods, silence. And that might seem contradictory, but to indulge in silence is really a beautiful thing. And once you're able to really come back to nature, as we say, we are animals. And people that argue that, well, we're another creature that lives on this beautiful planet. So when we're able to start to use our senses in the wilds with a bit of training and with a little bit of support in a safety bubble, because we want to keep you safe, but there is a bit of a risk as well, and it's not all glitz and glamour when we're here. So it's allowing us to come back to kind of our true selves in a way. It's amazing what we can actually pick up on and start to again learn from the animals, and we start to see just how much communication is happening that we can't see or hear because our senses don't pick up on it. But this happens a lot with elephants. When you're hanging around elephants, they're communicating pretty much all the time with really low hertz frequencies that we really struggle to hear. Yet sometimes those frequencies will start to come up a little bit, and our human ears can pick up on them. But there is some special technologies that we have where we can start to record when we show up to these areas, and you can see and you can hear these frequencies that they're communicating on the whole time. And you start to go, oh my
Wow.
goodness, just because we can't hear it or see it doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? And so often our human
Oh,
experience is all about that. We can't hear it or see it, then it's not happening. But no, there's a lot that's happening that we can't actually, physically see or hear and experience. Yet, if we actually just tune out and really come back to our centers and really dive back into the basic laws of nature and the environment, so to speak. It's amazing what we can start to pick up on.
There's a huge lesson in there that encompasses a whole bag full of stuff.
Yeah, that was a
And
big bag. Yeah.
yeah, speaking of lessons, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the lessons that you've learned since you've been leading these retreats as a retreat leader?
Good question. I would say some of the bigger lessons I've learned with being a leader in this type of space is there's a couple. My first one is really getting to know, and I want to say screening clients as much as possible, and not in that corporate doctor fill out list, tell me all of your woes, but understanding that we all have our own things happening in our lives. We all have our own stresses and our emotional baggage and troubles in our lives. And when we come on these grand adventures, there's a lot of expectations that people have, usually a mixed expectation bag. And it's really important to be able to bring down some of those expectations that people have. And I always say, have low expectations and then over deliver. With clients coming here, we really try to educate as much as we can beforehand. Africa is a big, scary place to a lot of people. And most of us only know these places by, stories or movies or, a lot of, in words, a lot of old propaganda that doesn't really serve anything good towards where we're coming. So a lot of what I've learned is really to educate people about where we're going, why we're going there, and to not oversell it or over, you know, share, but really be direct, be very selective on what we share, but just tell the truth and share really the fundamentals of why we're going there and what's important about it. Another big another big factor that we've learned here is to let people do people things. Sometimes on these retreats, we try and cram as much as we possibly can in, and there's always more things to see and to experience. However, when we first started out, our itineraries were packed. I mean, you're up at 5 in the morning, sometimes 4:30 in the morning. You're going on drives, you're going on walks, you're coming back, a little bit of a lunch, you're going out for another walk, there's another activity, you're hot sun, you're another activity, you're coming back for evening. There was a lot during the day. And that can be okay for a few days, but learning that people do need time to really embrace and to relax and to rest. So we design our itineraries now based on kind of an up and a down, and I call that kind of the roller coaster ride. So one day is going to be really action packed. There's going to be moments where it seems like the day is taking forever. You don't even think about it because there's so much happening, and you're just experiencing, whether it be full game drive or walking in the bush for hours, seeing animals, and maybe it's on the water. There's going to be moments where your adrenaline starts to go a little bit. And then the next day, is so that night would be kind of a wind down. And then the next morning, a little bit more chill, maybe an easy walk, resting. Maybe people are having naps and then kind of re-diving in. So really designing that itinerary so there's kind of the up and the down, to allow people to really experience and to take it all in, because
Mm.
it's a lot and there's a lot of emotions that are happening here, especially for people that come here for the first time, uh, and seeing animals for the first time in their natural habitat. It can be quite an
Yeah,
emotional experience. Yeah.
I bet. I remember the first time I saw a giraffe in a hotel in a video, you know, like I just saw a video on Facebook. I think it was like 10 years ago of this hotel in Africa, and the giraffes were just coming up to where the people were eating. And I was just like, oh, like imagine in person. I think I would
Yeah,
die in a good
it's
way.
remarkable. It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one last question. What message do you hope to spread through the work that you do?
Hmm. Good question. You know, I'm so blessed to be able to do what I do. And I've been so privileged in life to have incredible experiences all over the world, whether it be Asia, Europe, Africa, North America, Central America. I've been so blessed with meeting, connecting with cultures from, every walk of life in a way. And through food, so often I'm reminded that we're all so similar. We have the ability to break bread together, to eat a soup together, whatever it is. Those mms and ahs on the table are an international language. And you realize that we all really care about the same things. We care about our families. We care about our communities. We care about our next generations that have yet to come. We have love and gratitude for our ancestors who have come and helped us be here and have moved on. So through our experiences and our itineraries and our adventures here in Africa, one of the foundations, foundational messages or really learnings and teachings I try and incorporate every day is to really get down to your gratitudes, is to really focus on what do you have in your life that you're incredibly thankful for, and who have helped you obtain that, who have helped you in your life, reach where you are. And so often we're so quick to disregard people that we no longer have in our lives, whether it be past loved ones, family members who have deceased, but even people that maybe we've been in fights with, or we no longer get along with, and we don't have them in our lives anymore. Yet all of those experiences combined with the experiences that we're having every day help us be who we are. So, give gratitude to that. Don't hold on to these grudges. Don't hold on to this negative energy that we so often do. So a message is, you know, live your truth, be honest with who you are, and be honest to those in your life. And that's a lot easier said than done. We've all said and done things that aren't truthful and can hurt people, myself included. I'd be the first one to say that I'm not perfect person, but I'm standing here in my own beautiful life and saying, hey, I've screwed up, but guess what? I'm trying to live better every day, and my message really is to help people experience some of that when they come over here and experience what I get to experience on a daily basis. So, spread that peace and love, lead with love, and really just write down your gratitudes every day, because it's amazing what will come back to you when you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are so amazing. Yeah. Is it too soon to tell you that I love you? Because I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do. You're
I've
an
got so much
amazing
love for
human
you too.
being.
Appreciate it.